Welcome to week 3 of our video discussion guide for the book of Revelation. I'm going to take a little bit different approach with this discussion guide in that I'm going to provide a written version of this on Interchange. So I've already posted this on Interchange, and you can go out there and get a sort of an extended version of this introduction that will provide you with a little bit more background and on the text that we're going to be discussing in this first letter to the churches of Revelation, in this case the letter to the church at Ephesus. Ephesus is a unique church in that we probably have more scriptural insight into the background of church at Ephesus than we do with any other book. And the written version of this will provide you with those scriptural references where you want to, if you want to go back and look and see how the church at Ephesus had been shaped over the years, probably over the span of at least 2 generations of Christians, up until the time they received this letter from Jesus via John in the book of Revelation. That would be an interesting thing to look at, to see how some of these things that we see even in the book of Revelation were sort of foreshadowed as we look at the story of how the church began in the book of Acts, chapters 18 and 19, how the church developed, the letter to the church at Ephesus, and the letter to Timothy, who was stationed at Ephesus while Paul had moved on. They really provide a lot of insight into some of the things that we see in this letter to the church at Ephesus in Revelation. So I'm going to get right into the discussion questions and provide you with a little background and commentary on those questions that will help you as you use these as a springboard for discussion in your groups. So the first question that I think your group should ask itself is, if Jesus were to write a similar letter to your small group, what do you think that he would say? And we've already provided you with some tools to help in this regard. On Interchange, I've put out a post called Letters to the 7 Churches of Revelation. We have a written guide that will walk you through how to use the tools that we've provided and what we'd like you to do with that information once you've gathered it from your groups. Basically, the idea is that we're going to collect the information from these group discussions in terms of what does your group identify as the needs where it needs to grow and the things where it's doing well. Collect that information from all the groups and help provide sort of a snapshot or a picture of where we are as a whole church family. So for more details on that, refer to the information that's already been posted on Interchange. The second question I'd like your group to wrestle with is, in what ways is your small group like the church at Ephesus, and in what ways is it different? And here's where that chart that's included in the resources we provided to you, the Letters to the 7 Churches chart, might help you as you study this beforehand to identify those things, and then perhaps even you might even want to do that as a group if you think that'd be helpful for your group. Other groups that may not work very well, so use your best judgment on what's the best way to get at that for your group. But what you want to do is, with this question are these things that the church at Ephesus was either corrected for or commended for, are those also true of your small group itself? And then what implications does that have for what you ought to do in terms of applications? So the next question I'd like you to consider is sort of a fun question. I call it a curveball question maybe. And I like to throw one of these in our group discussions every now and then. So the question goes like this: does studying the Bible help your group to love God more? Why or why not? And you might get some funny looks from the people in your group when you ask this question, because some people might think, well, of course studying the Bible is good, right? We should study our Bibles. That would help us to love God more. Well, maybe, maybe not. And I think the answer to this question really is going to depend on your group. For some of those in your group that are really new in their faith, that really might be the best thing for them to do, is spend as much time in the Word and in prayer. And that will really help them grow and deepen in their love for God and love for other people. For other people in your group, maybe people like me that have been Christians for a long time, have been studying our Bibles for a long time, you know what, maybe that isn't actually the most important thing for us to do to be able to grow in our love for God, or to maintain our love for God. Maybe for a person like me, the most important thing to do is simply do the things that I already know that I should do, rather than just learn more information about God. And my tendency is the latter. So I always need to be challenged to put into practice what I've learned, rather than just to write it down on a nice sheet of paper and set it up on my shelf. So I think the answer to the question will probably really depend on where your group's at. So this will be a fun discussion for your groups to have, because it's one of those questions that might really get people scratching their heads. The last question that I'd like you to consider is what symptoms might indicate if your group is starting to or has abandoned the love that it had at first. In other words, if it's starting to make the mistake that the church at Ephesus made, what would that look like? How would you know if your group is starting to get off track in this regard? And if that's true, then what do you need to do? What are the concrete, specific things you need to do to get back on track, to rebuild or rekindle the love for God that you had at first? So this question is really designed to help your group to kind of identify what those early warning signs might be if they're beginning to drift in their relationship with God, where it has moved from a real soulish love and real life expression of the gospel to simply doing the right things, saying the right things, believing the right things, but never actually really manifesting the love of God in the way that God has intended for us to do. So how will you know? As we all know, when we're making a mistake or when we're off track, we're often the last ones to be able to see it. So this is the real trick with this question, is to help your group think through those ideas of, well, how will we really know if we are beginning to make this same kind of mistake? So I look forward to what God will do in your discussions in your groups as you wrestle with these questions, and I pray that that will be something that will move us all closer to rekindling that love that we had for God if we've perhaps grown cold or grown just too comfortable in where we're at in our faith. I think this will be this lead-off discussion on the letters to the churches will really be a healthy thing for our church as a whole. So I pray that God will use that in your groups as well.